If you clicked on this video, you're probably a young person in your 20s or 30s feeling stuck, feeling lost, feeling like, what is my purpose? I've also felt like that. I've had very difficult times in my 20s and 30s, and you're not alone. I see almost everyone around me in this kind of age feeling similar kinds of things. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about why this happens, what we can do to get unstuck, and why this could actually be a blessing. Hello, my name's George. I used to have a corporate career in London in my mid-20s, but I ditched that to travel the world and become a yoga teacher in India. Since then, my life and career have continued to be a massive roller coaster, from being one of the most followed traders in the world, managing tens of millions of dollars, to running my own e-commerce business, to being featured on Forbes 30 under 30. Now I've made another big change, starting here with you from scratch, focusing on discovering my own true self, my potential, and helping others to do the same so that we can all live more meaningful, happy, and fulfilling lives. So let's start by taking a look at the traditional midlife crisis. So this is something that tends to happen much later in life, when people are in the kind of 45 to 65 age bracket. And what is happening? Why did it used to happen at this kind of age? So much so that we gave it this name, right? Midlife crisis. So the reason seems to be that you get to this point, and throughout your life, you've had this sort of map in mind, right? That you're initially given when you're born, when you're very small, of this is what a good life looks like. This is what I have to do. I have to go to school, get good grades, get a good job, have a certain type of career, get married, have kids, etc., etc., etc. These are all the boxes that you have to tick in order to have a good life. So once we hit that kind of age, that's the point when we've ticked all those boxes, right? Most people have. And then they start to ask themselves, now what? What happened to my life? What is this it? Like, what is the meaning? This sort of lack of identity, lack of purpose. Those are the feelings that people kind of go through at this sort of age. So the sad thing is about this is that it makes you realize that it's not until we've achieved all of those things that we stop to question them, right? We've trusted our parents, our institutions, our general social norms that this is what we should do. So why is it that we then feel bad at this age? And it's very interesting to look at some of the studies from, famous psychiatrists like Jung, who observed that this kind of feeling of unease and discomfort at this age is basically a call from the psyche to look at an unexamined life. So what has happened? Why are people now in their 20s and 30s, decades earlier than it used to be, starting to feel these same kinds of feelings? There's a number of reasons, and the first one, I think, is that we live in a world of exponential change. This is something that we've never really experienced in the history of humanity. It's the first time where the last few generations have kind of grown up in a world that would have been completely alien to their parents or their grandparents. So we've lost that sense of a linear, predictable life that used to be the case for most of humanity. And we've ended up in this world where no one has prepared us for it. And frankly, it's very chaotic. Some of it is a result of good things. So we're all interconnected. We have all this extra abundance, all these opportunities. But with that also comes higher expectations, comes a kind of analysis paralysis. We're looking around us and we're thinking remote work, passive income, I can study, I can take this career, I can have kids, not have kids, get married, not have married. So many things that wouldn't have really been considered in the past. So some people are kind of quote unquote arriving earlier, right? They decide to skip some steps, like we said, they don't get married, they don't have kids, they choose to live a different kind of life. And so they're sort of getting to that point of, okay, I've had my studies, I've maybe had a bit of a career, I don't want those other things, so I'm kind of done with society's map and I'm 25. Now what? Right? It's that same kind of feeling. We haven't updated how we look at life or how we judge a good life. So people who now are choosing to live a bit differently might find themselves kind of alone or confused or shamed because for centuries this was what you did and what was expected of you. Now we're able to do different things, which some people embrace, but there's kind of still this feeling of unease of, am I allowed to do this, or should I be doing this or that, right? You hear this question a lot. I'm this age, should I have this career? Should I be married? Should I have kids? And I think it can be a good sign, right? That we're starting to question these things, have a little more autonomy. But the flip side of that is that it brings these feelings, right? It's more comfortable to just go ahead with the plan and not question anything. But then you get your midlife crisis later on. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I feel like it's shifted back. The next thing, and I know you probably don't want to hear this, is technology. So what is the reason, right? Technology has really shaped our lives, but how does technology tie to us having these feelings earlier on in life? But I think one of the insidious things about technology has been basically how we've become addicted to it, right? And I think most of us really are. And that word can sound a little exaggerated, but think about your little transition moments in life, right? When you're waiting for the bus, or you're waiting for the elevator to come, or just waiting in line at the supermarket, 30 seconds, 1 minute, few minutes. You'll see a lot of people just get their phones out and there's no real reason. There's not a message to reply to. There's not something to look up. There's not something to do. It's just instant comfort. And the problem with that is that it doesn't give you enough time to just be with yourself. And being with yourself and exploring, feeling your own emotions is really important, because that is what guides us. That is what puts us in touch with our inner compass. And not being in touch with our inner compass is exactly what leads you to feeling lost, right? You see how these things connect up. So basically technology has been like an enabler for us to rely too much on the outside world. We used to have the influence of our parents, and that, was already problematic for a lot of people, having to manage, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what my parents want to do. But now you instantly have the influence of all the influencers, all your friends, your parents, the news, everything is on your phone and you're looking at it the whole time. So you're getting all these messages, and your own little voice, your own little compass can easily get drowned out in all that noise, and we kind of lose track of it. So here's the controversial part, right? How can these feelings of being lost, of being behind, of not knowing what your purpose is, how can this be a blessing for this to happen early in your life? So hear me out. First of all, when you think about it, it's happening earlier. Would you rather it happen earlier or later? If it happens earlier, it might be more challenging, but at least you have the chance to figure this out earlier on in your life. So if you do that, you can live the rest of your life aligned, and feeling good about yourself and your choices. Whereas if the later it happens, the sadder it is, in a sense, right? Like, why do we feel so sad when we see these videos of people and their regrets on their deathbed? It's because, it's too late. You realized what you wanted to do when it's literally too late. And the same goes for the people who are in, say their 50s or 60s. It's not too late. You still have a good chunk of life, but probably weighs heavier on your heart to realize that, okay, most of my life I was misaligned. Whereas now, if you're in your 20s or 30s, you have the chance to be aligned for most of your life. And I think it's even better than we naturally think, because I've heard from people this kind of idea that, okay, I'm 30, so let's say I'm a third of the way through my life, just for some easy math. But I don't think that's really true, right? Because if you think about your life so far, the first, let's say, 20 years, you're basically in education, right? That's the case for most people. Definitely the first 10, you don't have that much autonomy. You're just doing what your parents tell you. You start to be a little more independent in college, but most of us are just kind of starting to figure things out. And then most of us have an initial career experience that's more aligned with what is expected of us. And that is usually the initial point, the earliest point where you can start to think, this doesn't feel right. So if we say that that's, 25, then if you're 30, you've only actually had 5 years of misalignment that you could have corrected, and that's a pretty small portion of your life. When you look ahead, if you're going to live to 80 or 90, okay, you have another 50 or 60 years of living how you want. The next way that you could see this is that it's actually a spiritual calling. So usually when things throw us off or don't make much sense in the outside world, that's when we start to look inside, right? And that is, in a sense, the definition of a spiritual journey. What is a spiritual journey? It's a journey towards you discovering your authentic self. Another controversial take here is that you could actually see this as a privilege. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that starts with the sort of shelter and food and then goes all the way up to self-actualization, the fact that you are able to feel and think about these issues actually kind of implies that you already have the basic things figured out. Because if you didn't, if you had to worry about if you were hungry or you didn't have a roof over your head, those would be your priorities, your full-time concerns. And you wouldn't have time to worry about meaning or alignment or these things. So this could be viewed in a positive light, that past generations maybe were more focused on these basic things. And now that we have this level of economic abundance and this technological world, you can almost see it as a kind of spiritual awakening. Everyone has been freed to focus on these higher level problems, which are not easy, right? It's not that kind of comparison. It's, you could argue actually that it's the most challenging thing, but that is where we are. That is the problem that we are now faced with. Ultimately, I think the more things you can figure out early on, the better, right? If there's some difficult lessons in life, you want to learn them early. And it can be very challenging, So for me, I'll give you a personal example. Certain things that I thought I was aiming for that were going to make me happy or solve some problems, they didn't, And when you get there and you get to the point where you thought this was where the treasure is on the map, and then there's nothing there or it's very fleeting, that can be very challenging, because then you start to think, well, where is it? Have I wasted this time going in the wrong direction? And it goes back to what we were saying before. Would you rather figure that out when you're 25, 30, 35 or 65? As soon as you figure out what is not true or not good for you, you have an opportunity to recalibrate. And I think that's really a gift. So you're in your 20s or 30s, you're feeling like this, what can we do about it? So I think the very first step is to imagine that as you've been going through life, you have this backpack on and you've just been filling it with stuff, right? Your parents tell you, you should do this in the backpack. Your teachers, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. You're just adding stuff, TV, influencers, shows, friends, and you've just got this huge backpack of trash, and a few of those things in there are yours, but it's hard to tell what's what. It's become heavy, it's confusing. So you've got to take inventory. You've got to take it off, take everything out, and just be ruthless. Look at where these things came from. Ask yourself, is this mine? Is it not? If it's not yours and you don't want it in your future, just get rid of it. Start really narrowing down, and it might be painful. There might be things that you have to let go of, and you think, I'm going to disappoint this or that person, or you had become attached to that idea, but you really have to do this to start being aligned with yourself. You need to stop measuring yourself against these external yardsticks and find your own, because if you're not careful, you do that for your whole life. And then, you end up having the traditional midlife crisis at 50, or, it could drag on for your whole life. And I think that kind of regret must be really the worst thing ever. So you need to connect with yourself, right? Stop doing things that you feel you should, and ask yourself, what do you want to do? Who are you? And this can be a difficult process, because sometimes you have to navigate some difficult questions, difficult answers, but you want to figure out, who am I? What am I trying to do? So you need to really get in touch with that inner compass, spend time alone, reflect on your life, ask yourself, how did I get here? Why did I do this thing? Why am I doing this other thing? Do I want to do it? And sometimes that can lead to some kind of strange realization. So for me, I remember being in London. I had a corporate career quite in my 20s. And one day I was just journaling, and I asked myself, did I choose to be here? And it kind of struck me. I was like, no, how am I here? And I just realized that by following all these vague ideas that I had in my head, that I don't even know who from, I'd gone to a certain university, I'd got a certain job, but it was never really my decision. You feel like you're choosing, but you're really just going along with the pack. And then you sort of realize that this isn't your life. You're just living this life that you should, this vague societal should. And it's very empowering. You suddenly realize, I could be anywhere. I could be doing anything. And you really can. I mean, obviously there's some challenges and some limitations in reality, but I was going to that office job in London. You want to be a surf teacher in Costa Rica? Go for it. You got to get your visa. You got to know how to surf. You got a few things to figure out, but ultimately you can do that. You have to start to see the pain and discomfort that you're feeling as a byproduct of searching for the truth, right? And you see this in all these famous stories like The Alchemist, or like this Hindu tale of where they're trying to get this gold from the bottom of the ocean, but first the poison comes up. There's always these stories of transformation, and where you have to go through the pain and the muck first to get to the gold. So you've already started that process. If you're trying to escape from the pain, it lingers and it's not serving any purpose. But if you are intentional about it and you observe it, it will transform. It will help you transform. In order to do this, you need to focus inwards. Stop having so much external input and let things come up. You'll have things that are not processed, not integrated. And this is the process of becoming whole. Letting some things go, transforming other things, and really becoming who you truly are, who you're meant to be. And the feelings that you feel, this pain, this sadness, it is basically a form of grief, right? You are letting go of this version of you, this version of your life is literally dying. This version that you thought you had to live, that you had imagined, that people told you. And through that pain, you can be reborn into what you actually want to do. What a gift, right? So take action in this direction. Focus inside, meditate, journal, search for more information about how to connect with your inner world. And remember what I was saying before about technology. Try and limit your inputs, your external inputs, because that will confuse you. It will dilute your ideas about who you are. It will contaminate the purity of your own ideas. And I know this might sound kind of weird, but also protect what you discover. They're kind of like little seedlings. If you discover you're meditating and you think, you know what, I wanted to be a painter or a vet or whatever it might be. If you expose that and you tell the wrong person or the right person in the wrong way, they might crush it, and then you might believe them and you might lose that delicate little seedling. So Freud discovered that talking can basically be a substitute for action. And what that means is that, let's say you have an action in your mind, right, that you wanna take. There's a certain amount of energy there with it, and as you talk about that thing, you are diluting that energy. You're getting the same feeling as if you were doing it. So that can invite you to protect that energy. Don't tell people about what you're thinking, what you're doing. But conversely, if you have negative energy, if you are sad about something, or there's just a sense of negativity, that you can share, because actually venting that out dilutes it and diminishes it for you. So if you think about it, sadly, this is the opposite of social media, right? What have we been conditioned to do? None of us share our struggles, or very reluctantly, and everybody shares their highlights, right? Everybody shares their highlight reel, they get all the likes, the comments, the feedback, and then that kind of stops us from needing to actually do anything, because you've already kind of received that reward in your brain for just talking about the thing or trying to do the thing. If you want to do this inner work and start living in alignment, discover your true purpose and who you really are, there are 7 steps that can really help you to find out clues and point you in the right direction. And I talk about them in a lot more detail in this video here if you want to check it out next.